I'm very excited to talk to you about to bring speakers to tell you about the Livable Communities Initiative, because this is kind of the culmination of a lot of what we've been talking about in terms of how housing and transportation and demographics work together. Lindsay Sturman is an expert in active transportation and the host of the podcast Bike Talk. It's also on PFK, right?
Yeah.
She is the co-founder of the Livable Communities Initiative, a plan to build housing along livable streets near transit while addressing mobility, traffic, and climate. Before her climate and mobility activism, she founded 3 nonprofits to advance equity in education and diverse public schools. She's a TV writer and producer. She is a BA from Harvard and an MBA from Columbia. And also, to help answer questions, we have Eduardo Mendoza, a policy director for the Livable Communities Initiative and a professional city planner in LA. He's an active member of the Santa Monica Democratic Club and Parking Reform Network. Mendoza received his master's in planning from USC's Price School of Public Policy. He's a current board member for Abundant Housing LA, and he's the acting board chair for Inclusive Santa Monica and former board chair for Transportation and Equity and Elections Committees for Palms Neighborhood Council. Mendoza is also a demographer who's worked with Children's Hospital Foundation, Lucille Packard Foundation, Haynes Foundation, and whose work has also been featured in Cityscape, Slate, and the Wall Street Journal. So I welcome our distinguished speakers. And I think Lindsay is going to share some of her slides, right?
Yes, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Here we go. Well, thank you everybody for having me. The Livable Communities Initiative is a plan to address our housing crisis while also addressing our traffic and climate crisis. And the idea, as Grace said, is to build housing above small retail in walkable neighborhoods near transit. And it's hard to know where to start with housing and mobility because it's become such a Gordian knot and there's so much misinformation. And there are all these third rails, like it's traffic, it's people's neighborhoods. So I thought I would start with what really woke me up to the bike issue and active transportation is an interview and conversation with Dr. Peng on the podcast. And then it followed with a lot of emails and phone calls and Twitter. And she really educated me about the potential of e-bikes, along with climate scientist Costa Samaras from Carnegie Mellon, who laid out in a paper how EVs cannot get us to our climate goals, but e-bikes can. So bikes play this huge role in housing as well, because parking is inextricably tied to the housing crisis in actually more than, it's like 3 or 4 different ways. And so some version of a 15-minute city is the core of most housing solutions. And the idea, the LCI is the 15-minute community. I don't know if there's a echo there. So in this presentation, I'll lay out the problem of our housing crisis, our solution, the roadblocks, and how we think we can find consensus, and then a plan a way to implement it. So the plan came out of a neighborhood civic group based in Larchmont and Hancock Park, which is where I live. It's Hodge, Hang Out, Do Good. We're a civic group of 3,000 activists, and we wanted to understand the housing crisis. So our group, over about a year and a half, has reached out and talked to and sort of formed this brain trust from people from the world of housing, architecture, building code, ed, mobility, equity, and we talked to a lot of stakeholders. And what we came to understand is the crisis of our unhoused neighbors, the tents and the encampments, is the tip of the iceberg. We have a massive shortage of close to 500,000 homes, some say 1 million homes in the county. And the scarcity means that rents are twice what they should be in comparable cities like Houston. And we also know that homelessness tracks with rent burden. So for a third of our unhoused neighbors, they're homeless for economic reasons. So high rent and because there are no vacancies, especially in low cost units. And it's getting worse. Every day we house 200 people in LA, but 240 people fall into homelessness. So we have to build housing. And we also have to build it equitably. And the LA City Council passed something called the Equitable Distribution of Affordable Housing. And it's the idea is that we need to build affordable housing where we haven't built it, and we haven't built neighborhoods that haven't built their fair share. And this creates displacement and gentrification. And the East Side and South LA have built more than their fair share. So you can see the numbers right here. And so any plan should really include building in high opportunity neighborhoods where there's jobs, transit, and amenities. And the greatest need, as you can see here, is the West Side. And another challenge is there's simply not enough funding. We need to build, as I said, 500,000 units, and our funding from HHH and our programs covers about 3,000 units a year. We just passed this really powerful proposition, ULA, United to House LA, and that could more than double that. But we really, the scope of the problem has gotten so huge. And for 43% of our deficit, it's moderate income affordable. That's nurses, teachers. The market, it's not subsidized. So the market has to build it. So this other challenge is to create an environment. How can the market build our affordable housing? So it's profitable to build and affordable to rent. So how do we get here? The main issue is zoning. In 1986, voters downzoned LA to 1.5 stories, and we essentially over time stopped building. And now it costs way too much and takes way too long. And why does it cost so much? We took apart the cost using data from the Turner Center at Berkeley, which studies the cost of affordable housing in California, and from real projects in LA. And when you look at the costs, the blue wedge of the pie, land isn't the issue. And it's not construction. It's not the price of lumber, which went way up and has come back down. It's the parking and all this red tape. And it's until recently, we mandated parking. Luckily, we got rid of that thanks to AB 2097. But we also add soft costs, which is lawyers, expeditors, and consultants. That's 20%. That's to get through the system and deal with the neighbors and the city council office. Then there's carrying costs that goes on for 4 to 7 years. And you're paying interest and taxes. And then we add on all these fees and rules that we don't add on to, say, a single family home. So the story of housing is we've added so many costs. It no longer pencils out. So nothing pencils out, so nothing gets built. And essentially the red tape destroyed the economics and profitability of multifamily apartments, which is the market failure we're in. So we asked the question, why do people fight housing? How do we get here? And we found from a ton of conversations, and the electeds will really tell you this as well, it's really mainly 3 things. Ugly architecture, not to cast aspersions. Tall buildings, people don't want tall buildings next to their single family home. And in general, Angelenos don't like tall buildings, we have found, because they're very vocal about it. And traffic and jammed up parking on their street. So we were able to come up with a plan that addressed all 3 of these, and has really, we found broad popular support. So it's gentle density, 3 to 5 stories of human scale, missing middle housing along commercial corridors, with beautiful architecture and car light walkable neighborhoods, so it won't increase traffic. It's a 15-minute city that we're finding that neighbors can really support. But for this to work, the housing has to get built and the mobility has to work. And a systems engineer in our group helped frame it a different way. We have 2 broken systems. We have a housing system that doesn't work because the market can't build any kind of housing other than ultra luxury. And the mobility is broken because in LA and most of Southern California and a lot of the country, it's too far to walk, it's too dangerous to bike, it's too inconvenient to take a bus. And so we're all really just stuck in traffic. So these 2 systems have to work in concert. So first I'll talk through the housing economics and how do we build something called NOAH, naturally occurring affordable housing. So it's affordable housing without subsidies. And I'll also talk about how this program also helps subsidize affordable housing because they're both incredibly important. So naturally occurring affordable housing, this is my brother bought a fixer and he took this really rundown ADU and he renovated it. It's really beautiful. It's tiny. It's $1,500 a month. They have a long wait list of people who want to live in this unit. And it's technically affordable housing. I know it's kind of hard to believe, but an ADU can be affordable housing. And how do we do this? We've built so many ADUs in LA, and it's because we simplified and streamlined. There's no parking, there's no red tape, there's no delays. It's a 24-hour permit. And they had to change the law, I think, 2 or 3 times so that cities didn't charge these onerous fees. It also means that property owners, somebody owns a single family home, they can develop their own land, which remove the cost of land from the equation. We know it's not huge, but it does simplify things. And there's one other type of NOAH that gets built, and Ed really brought this to our attention. It's called fourplexes. They're just a single family home lot that had a quirk in the zoning, and you were allowed to do 2 structures with they're not quite allowed, but you could kind of slip it past them. 4 units on each floor, 16 units. They rent for $1,000 a month. They're profitable and they really don't cost a lot to build. And so these popped up all over LA. They're not a lot of the parcels left. The architecture is not that nice, but it's affordable and it's profitable. So we were finding all these examples where really Housing Diversity Corporation was building micro units without parking. And we just kept sort of came to this realization that small units without parking are naturally affordable. So if you can build them, and you can see here, we pulled rents from Craigslist and Zillow in high opportunity neighborhoods like the West Side, and they're low income affordable housing. Here's 2 bedrooms. They're almost all moderate income affordable housing. So we sort of understood, what are we going for? Now, how do we scale it? So there's one type of housing that's incredibly profitable to build in LA and most of the country. It's single family homes. And it's the type of housing we all agree is the worst for the environment, sprawl. And you don't have to add all these costs. And it's especially profitable. It's super high end. So here's investor math. This is a 4-story, 7-bath, single family home in Marina del Rey. It's a spec house, and it was put on the market for $7 million, incredibly profitable to build. And the minute that 4-story, 7-bath house becomes a 4-story, 7-unit multifamily house, you can see what happens to the cost. Suddenly it's $1,200 a square foot. Instead of building it under a year, it's 4 to 7 years, because we essentially add all of these costs. So we wanted to create parity. I want to focus for a second on the role of parking. Now, thankfully, we've gotten rid of minimums, but Santa Monica got rid of minimums, I think maybe 5 years ago, and developers don't don't use it. They build the parkings. The parking's an amenity. It raises the rent. They like to build the parking. So parking really destroys everything we want to happen. And it does it in multiple ways. It destroys the viability of projects, the affordability of the units, and the political support, because it really makes beautiful buildings very hard to build. So I'll just walk through this quickly. Parking is expensive to build. So it makes projects just that much less able to pencil out. And what we were finding is somewhere around here, projects penciled out. And if you went all the way to here, they didn't. It means you have to assemble lots. Lot assembly is time consuming. It's very expensive. Small lots, this is a 25-foot wide lot. You need 42 feet to turn cars around. So small lots just simply can't get developed, which takes a ton of properties offline, because a lot of people, they won't ever sell the land. They inherited it, or their 12 cousins own it. They're not going to sell. The property owners we talk to, they're like, we will never sell. They barely pay taxes, which is of course another issue, and it's passive income. So lot assembly, the stats show that it raises the cost of land 30%. And again, it takes a ton of time. In terms of the affordability, parking incentivizes big units. So you can just see here, you're building a micro unit of 150 square feet, which I know is really small. You're still building 200 square feet of parking. Same thing here. But if you're building a 2,000 square foot 3-bedroom, you only need 2 spots. So the amount of parking, the real estate of parking is a fixed amount. So developers want to amortize that parking over not lots of units, fewer units that are bigger, which are therefore more expensive. And it also just adds to the cost of rent. It adds an average of $225 to the cost of rent for parking. And then it ends up doing this to the buildings. You end up getting, this is a podium of 3 stories of parking with large expensive units above it. Neighbors hate it. You've got to go tall to make it all pencil out. So we're sort of just back into this sort of, catastrophic failure, and adding all these carrying costs and soft costs to get through the neighbors. So parking is a huge issue to remove. And without parking, all these really great things happen. Small lots don't need to be assembled. A single property owner can develop their own parcel. And all of this just saves time and money and takes, again, the cost of land out of the equation. But we wanted to make sure it was feasible. So we've done 2 feasibility studies. And we had an architect in our group design a building for this it was a pottery studio. It was for sale for $1.2 million. So we really looked at the real numbers. And then Ed, who's on the Zoom, helped us figure out what has to change to make this building, first of all, just legal, because there were all these things that made it illegal. And so it pencils out so people actually build them. And he did John, our architect, and Ed just did these really wonderful things. They got rid of side yard setbacks and front yard setbacks, or I should say they adjusted them. And they created these beautiful light wells and open space and green space. So these, going back to those courtyard apartments. And then it's something called vertical shared access, which I will talk about, and Ed is the expert and he can talk to you a lot more. He also got rid of rec rooms, so apartments could be bigger, and of course no parking. And all of this together, and parking, there is parking for accessibility. All of this together meant there was 40% more livable, rentable space. So it helped the developers, but it also helps the renters because you have bigger apartments. So this really necessary reform, which Grace and I have actually talked about, is sometimes called single staircase, but vertical shared access reform. And it's basically, it allows for beautiful buildings like this and not sort of double loaded corridors, these big TOC buildings, which, you know, it's housing. Some people like them, some other people don't. But you need the single staircase or vertical shared access to get buildings like this. And these have broad popular appeal. So you take away the issues of, you know, ugly architecture, again, not to cast aspersions, and also the height issue by building buildings like this. And one of the best ways to get beautiful architecture, because we know it's a priority, is standard plans. They're free architectural drawings. They're designed for the standard parcel size on any given block. So all the parcels in LA, all the blocks have basically the same size parcel. And they're pre-approved by right. They eliminate the entitlement process, which saves 40 to 45%, as some people estimate. So they're an off-the-shelf turnkey solution for a small property owner to develop their own land for their family, for themselves, for some income. And it's not big developers and it's not the big banks, which is very appealing to people. And obviously it's a you know, shared prosperity, and we want small businesses. And we have a ton of infill builders in LA that don't build. They build mansions in Calabasas, they build ADUs, or they build in Texas. They can't build multifamily, small multifamily buildings. So again, back to the ADUs, which really are a model for how we can solve a lot of these problems. So LA has a model for standard plans, ADUs. You go to the DBS website, there's 70 plans, you can download them, and they come with a 24-hour permit. So we want to replicate that model. It's also how a lot of beautiful cities, including Paris, was built. Paris had standard plans with this beautiful vernacular, and then there were variations on the theme. And here you can see the pattern book, and all the buildings had to be 6 stories, same style, slight variations. And it's why Paris is so beautiful. It feels of a piece. And as humans, we love order and variety. It just makes us feel good. And we love for the height of the building to be the width of the street. It feels like a living room. And so we have a lot of urbanists in our group that have really educated me about this. And one of the ideas of this is to bring back that wonderful feeling of cities, that livability, that quality of life, especially for our affordable housing. And it can happen very quickly because it's also happening with a lot of actors, you know, one parcel at a time. And the red lines on this map are all the Haussmann buildings, the standard plan buildings in Paris. And they were built, the Paris we know was built in 20 years. And experts think that we could, using a model like this, we could build our housing deficit in 5 years in time for the Olympics. And it's how beautiful cities are built all over the world, one height, then variations. And the idea is like, let's pick the style of building we want, the location, and then incentivize what we want rather than incentivizing the housing we don't want. And the neighbors can pick the vernacular. So builders don't really care. They want to build something beautiful, but they'll build, you know, whatever they need to. But the neighbors really care. So our idea is let the neighbors and Cs, the neighbor councils, get everybody together and agree on in a positive process. And I'm actually going through this in my neighborhood because people want to bring this to my neighborhood. It's a really lovely, wonderful process of dreaming of what do we want our neighborhood to look like? And here's Santa Barbara. There's a vernacular you have to build in that style. And it's what gives it such a beautiful feeling. Santa Monica could be more beachy. Burbank could go back to the original architecture, same as Venice. And the colonnades and these arcades or colonnades are so important for sustainability because they lower the temperature of the building inside by 10 degrees. So, you know, we've been building around the Mediterranean for hundreds of years and we didn't have AC. So there's ways to do it with thick walls and high ceilings, which we can replicate. Cartagena, Italy, Spain, south of France, all of these are Mediterranean, all are appropriate to a Mediterranean climate, appropriate for our climate. And the standard plans have really changed the conversation and have I'd say a key part of the appeal of LCI for people. And we're just finding that people who traditionally fight housing, fight density, they want this in their community, and they get it. It's also for preservationists. It's very, if you have a historic neighborhood, it's really great to fill in that infill housing with really architecture that just fits in the neighborhood. And when we talk to people, what they love is they love the scale, and they love the vernacular, and they love they're having input into the design. But again, none of this works with parking. Where would you, if you built this little building or this little building, where would you put 8 cars, 12 cars? But this is the toughest thing for people to understand. Even our group, it really took us a while to get our heads around how much the parking ruins the affordability, the viability, the beauty, the scale, the political support. And you'd have to, if you're going to do underground parking, you'd have to rip up the whole block, destroy the fine grain retail. And again, it makes it, you have to go high, you have to assemble lots. It's sort of everything falls apart, and you get back to ugly buildings and just, not enough of them. But if you're not going to have parking, you really need mobility. And this is, of course, something that I'm really passionate about. And people will say, how are you going to create walkability 15-minute cities in LA? But we do have some neighborhoods that are really walkable, and it's our historic main streets. LA was a city of 400 villages. They were connected by trolleys and bikes, and they have all this wonderful fine grain retail. And they have a small town neighborhood feel, Westwood, downtown Burbank, Santa Monica. And just imagine 3 to 5 stories above the stores. And you also need transit, of course, for a 15-minute city. So we looked at historic main streets that touch our high quality transit. And we really started to think of this whole thing as a TOD, a transit-oriented development, and to focus on target historic main streets that literally touch a transit stop. And traditionally, we think of TODs or TOCs, transit-oriented communities, as circle around. You can see these just circles around transit stops. And we're thinking of them as a spoke, a linear 15-minute city, again, just touching our high-quality transit. But even if it touches, you really do need that first mile, last mile connection. And people need to get to the transit. And micromobility is, bikes, scooters. But this is probably the biggest challenge in LA. And people will say, no one bikes in LA. And there's a lot of truth to that. So our systems engineer in our group, Martin Tomas, did an empathetic user case. And he asked the question, can we create a mobility system that works in LA for all households and all types of family structures? And we all know instinctively that these bike lanes do not work. There's no way most people would use these bike lanes. And the data from the Dodge shows that our instincts are right. 1% of people will use an unsafe bike lane. But once you make it safe, 80 to 90% of people will use a completely safe bike lane. And if you ever watched videos or been to Amsterdam and Copenhagen, every Dutch city has cracked this nut and then replicated it, because it's design and engineering. It's like a plane, you can replicate it, or a bridge. Somebody compared it to like a freeway. The angle of the banking is determined so that you don't flip your car. And we can do that for bike lanes. So the data is really interesting, explains why we build bike lanes and they don't scale up. So this is a study from Portland that showed the different types of cyclists. So 1% of people are fearless, they'll bike anywhere. We see them biking practically on freeways. 8% are confident, enthusiastic, they bike, they'll use protected bike lanes and a bike lane network. Most people want to bike though. And this Portland study aligns with the safety level of bike infrastructure in cities. So LA has a very poor quality bike infrastructure, and 1% of people bike. New York and Portland is known as the Amsterdam of the United States. They have hundreds of miles of networked protected bike lanes with some pinch points, little moments of, I bike there in New York. It's great. And then you drop off into Broadway and you're in traffic and I'm like, okay, I can't do this anymore. So they've been stuck at 6 to 8% mode share for like a decade. They can't get past it. And this observation was made by Brett Atencio Thomas, the active transportation coordinator for the city of Costa Mesa. And he saw in all of his work, he saw this pattern. But then you get to Amsterdam and Copenhagen, uncompromisingly safe. And then suddenly pretty much everybody starts to bike. It's like ciclovia. If you remove the cars, the streets fill with bikes right away. And this is all just incredibly relevant if we want to create car light or even car-free communities where they're going to need micromobility to get to the grocery store, get to their job, get to the transit. And households aren't just made up of people who are fit and brave, that 8% or that 1%. They have partners, they have kids, they have parents. So if we want this to work, the data is really telling us that the biking is not incremental. It's really an on-off switch. And here's just another visualization. When it's safe, it works. When it's unsafe, there's really a cap on the number of people who do it. And we just think this is really worth pushing for. And it also solves this mystery of, we love to bike. We go on vacation to bike. It's some of our happiest childhood memories are of biking. But when it comes to bike lanes, people fight them. People who love to bike fight them. And the answer is that, I think the answer is, I should say, is that bike lanes are so scary, and so we're also stressed about traffic that we just don't see the value in bike lanes. And to make things safe and get people to use bike lanes, speed is the key. It's probably the beginning, middle, and end of it, because 20 miles an hour, which is not driving that fast. If you hit someone, they have a 10% chance of dying. At 40 miles an hour, they have a 90% chance of dying. And the speed limit in most of LA is 35 miles an hour. That you don't even get a ticket, which you never do, at 45 miles an hour. So the street next to my house is as fast as the freeways of my youth. And the only safe speed, the Dutch would say, for children is 9 miles an hour. And I think we just need to we keep trying to ask our streets to be all things to all people, and streets cannot be a freeway and a street, vibrant, walkable business district. They just don't go together. And if you ask people, what is the speed you want a car going when they hit someone or they hit a kid, 20 miles an hour or 9 miles an hour? And the answer is actually 0. We don't want people hit by cars. So slowing the cars down really opens the door to so many things that we're talking about. But where does the traffic go if you take a street with a lot of cars and you slow it down? So there was another innovation that came from LADOT, and we spent hundreds of hours with LADOT understanding how streets work so that we could really create a plan, again, that works. We really want to be evidence-based, data-driven, practical, because we want this to work. So their idea was to focus on existing plans out there for street transformation. So Heart of Hollywood, there's already a plan that's been in the works for years, has a ton of support. The neighbors support it, the businesses support it, the council office support it. It's been studied and vetted by LADOT. And you can see it slow the cars down. They hit these little bike lanes because they're so controversial, alfresco dining and wide sidewalks. And one of the options is to fully pedestrianize the entire of Hollywood Boulevard. Then there was Uplift Melrose, to this vibrant shopping district, a lot of great little stores, slow down the cars. And then Westwood Village had a plan from their BID, their bid, to pedestrianize all the dotted lines. And this is, Westwood Village, and you've got UCLA, a ton of jobs, the medical center, and you could just imagine how great it would be. And other than the traffic, how great it can be. And, obviously I'm very passionate about bikes, but I do think the bikes and the micromobility are such a key part of this entire thing. And if we don't get it right, you can't get the transit right. And just some pictures to show, and trikes, Grace turned me on to trikes and e-trikes. And this is Ciclavia, just what happens when we take the cars off. It's so powerful. It's so livable. It's so accessible to so many people. I just think about kids. My kids are older, but I have a little niece, and I just imagine her biking to school. More people with disabilities. I have 2 people in my family who can't drive due to a disability. So this is it's very close to home. But more people with disabilities can use an adaptive bike than can drive. So it really opens up a whole new world. And then it opens up the world of little vehicles and NEVs and LEVs and golf carts. And you could just imagine our beach cities, Santa Monica, car-free weekends, or maybe, car-free neighborhoods where, you can get around. You just can't get around in a huge car. There's also an issue of equity, of putting our affordable housing along noisy, dangerous, polluted streets causes a host of health issues. And this is also something that Dr. Pang has really made me understand, is tire dust, and how even if we drive EVs and even if we find a million tech breakthroughs, you still have traffic and you still have that tire dust. I think we can also make an argument that if we're going to put our affordable housing along commercial corridors, this really is the plan in so many places, that if people are going to live without a car and almost never drive, they're doing everybody a favor for traffic and climate and air quality. And the street should really be for them, for the people who live there and work there and shop there. And it shouldn't be a freeway for someone else who doesn't live, work, or shop there to speed through to shave 30 seconds off their commute. So where would the LCI work best? And Westwood is probably the best location in LA. So if you're familiar with it, you've got the UCLA campus. I think it's like 40,000 kids or something, or students, I should say. And you've got the village, and then you've got the boulevard. And they have all three ingredients. So a ton of fine grain retail for walkability. It touches 2 high quality transit lines, the purple line's coming in and the Expo line's already there. And there's already a plan to pedestrianize it. And it's a dead end street. It's not a major artery. Westwood Boulevard, it's 1.5 miles. It just dead ends into the university, and it dead ends here and turns into like a little single family home street, and then it ends. So slowing the cars down and not having so many would have a minimal impact on traffic. And obviously from the mode shift over a short period of time, you'd see traffic evaporation. 63,000 people drive into Westwood every day. This is US Census data. You can see 20% of students commute. There's not enough housing. UCLA we know there are 20,000 parking spaces. We think there are a lot more. And it's this massive job center. And Ed has a group of interns who measured every parcel in the village and the boulevard, and nothing over like 2 or 3 stories, just, surface parking lots and 1 story, commercial stuff like that. And this does not involve, by the way, any homes. So there's no displacement in this plan. This is really just commercial buildings. And the village and the boulevard, 5 stories of LCI would be 25,000 homes. And if you look at the street, there's so much room to change it. So we waste so much street space all over the country. We don't need 11.5 feet for parking. You need 7 feet. You don't need 11.5 feet for driving. Some people say 10 feet. Some people say you can go as low as 9 feet. There's streets with 8.5 feet, which really slows you down, which is really good. And this is, again, one of our greatest public assets. And you could totally transform it and only lose 30% of the capacity of the street, because when you go from 4 lanes to 2 lanes, you only lose 30%. Because when we drive, we actually we stagger. And you get wide sidewalks. You could get a bike lane. You keep your parking for all the businesses, and you keep your drive lanes. Or you could do a transit corridor and connect those 2 high quality transit lines. Or you could do a Las Ramblas. Maybe it's on weekends, or maybe it's pedestrianized. And we worked with an artist to just imagine what it could look like. And you just imagine adding a tree canopy, and this would take a while, I admit it. Slow the cars down, keep the parking, al fresco dining, add the housing in the bike lanes. And we did another rendering for another street in the village. And this is a double-decker Whole Foods parking lot. It's really unpleasant. And you can just see the housing. It would just, the infill would just fit. So it would keep in the vernacular. You'd almost not even notice it. And the blue lines on this map are our entire RHNA deficit it's over 456,000 units. And maybe, you turn those streets into, there's still cars, there's still parking, or maybe you make them a promenade and you really reimagine them. You make it, Las Ramblas, and you start to really imagine the civic city, a city that really cares about the people, builds the commons, brings people together. And it's also a way to reimagine our streets and what do we want our streets to look like. And biking is, to me, such a key part of it. The Dutch think that LA could be the bike capital of the world. There's so many advantages to this way of living: health, safety, mental health, noise, stress, air quality. It saves you $10,000 a year on a car, $20,000 for a family, traffic, and of course, housing. It's our happiest form of transportation. We choose biking 58% of the time in some cities where it's safe. It's relaxing, it's exercise, it adds 6 months to your life, it's meditative, it makes me happy, it's convenient, and it's free. But we know it's not for everyone. And we know that people will always drive in LA. So if you live in an LCI, you still have Uber, car share. Turo is peer-to-peer car sharing, which is really popping up all over, and young people are using it. The Gen Z, they're not buying cars. They don't want to own cars. And then, of course, you could have municipal parking lots. We've overparked most of LA. And if you work in at UCLA, and you can live in an LCI nearby, you could actually leave your car at work, which someone pointed out, which I thought was a really interesting way to think about it. And then you could just walk and get your car on the weekends if you need it. So the market research shows there's an enormous untapped demand. It's the number one amenity home buyers want. 52% of Americans want to live in a walkable neighborhood. People outlive their ability to drive by 7 to 10 years. 65% of Gen Z doesn't want to own a car, and my kids are not getting their licenses, which I actually find frustrating, but it's hard to believe that there are not enough people who would want this lifestyle: artists, writers, people with disabilities, of course, people on a tight budget, people who want to live their values of sustainability. And then we just had a petition for something called Healthy Streets LA to bring in safer bike lanes and safer pedestrian infrastructure. 100,000 people signed it. So I think that there's a huge untapped market. This plan is also a way to support subsidized affordable housing and community land trusts. So it does it in a lot of different ways. First of all, LCI, our plan is for it to include 15% inclusionary zoning. And the LCI with the standard plans cuts costs by 40% and gives you 40% more livable space. It cuts the time down to building subsidized affordable housing and permanent supportive housing from 4 to 7 years, in some places 9 years to 1 year. And if we built our deficit, it would bring rents down. The studies show at least 21%. Some people say 50%, which is such an enormous impact on people's lives. And people will say, oh, rents won't come down. During COVID, they fell 15% in like 6 months because people moved away. So rents are like gas. They really do come down. And low-income Angelinos move every year and a half. So there's a ton of movement in the market. It also opens up a ton of city-owned and county-owned and school district-owned parcels that are currently not developable. Just to give you a perspective, LAUSD, Los Angeles Unified School District, which I think is like 26 cities, has 10,000 parcels in like 1,000 schools. So they have 9,000 extra parcels that are not being used for schools. And I talked to somebody there and they said that they're like 14 of them they think can become housing because they're not big enough. So they have all these small parcels that are just not developable. And all of those suddenly can open up. And then there's the impact on climate. This is a tool from UC Berkeley, the top 12 things LA could do for climate. And you can see in the orange, VMT reduction and urban infill are two of the most impactful. And the LCI actually combines them. And with standard plans, we can also bake in all this other sustainable design that a lot of them pay for themselves. And I love the heat pumps, by the way. Passive design, high ceilings, thick walls. You almost don't need AC, and it reduces heat. Solar panels, water recycling, electrification, which is obviously happening in a lot of cities anyways, and heat pumps. And it's along a walkable, bikeable street near transit. There's no parking, so you don't have the embodied carbon of building podiums. And then with a tree canopy and sustainable building materials and everything we can do for the watershed, it really becomes a plan to build 500,000 car-free, I should say, green homes, and really address. And because there's really no way to address transportation without getting people out of cars. So it starts to work on multiple levels. And we've transformed our cities for cars. If you can see this is, I think this is Cincinnati. And look what we did. LA has 7 freeways circling the city. I mean, the downtown circling. It just baffles me sometimes. 50% of Kansas City is surface parking lots. That's the yellow. And cities can transform. And it's happening all over the world. And people say Amsterdam was not always Amsterdam, but it didn't happen overnight. But it really can actually, with tactical urbanism and just scraping up the paint, repainting the street, and putting down fake grass, putting down planters. It really can happen almost overnight. And people are rethinking their cities in even bigger ways. This is a double-decker freeway through a residential neighborhood in Seoul. And it was transformed into one of the world's most beautiful linear parks. And it's now a destination. It's just really so stunning. So the LCI is moving through 4 cities. We're in 2 housing elements and a general plan. And we're pulling together a really broad coalition. When we pitch it to people, and we've pitched it to thousands of people, and we're finding that people can really, they can really get behind it. And because it's not hitting the things that people really fight. And the most important factors we think are the idea of the standard plans, the beautiful architecture, and streamlining, and just taking that really seriously, that housing has to get built, has to work for it to get built, and then the child-safe streets for the mobility. And we love questions, concerns, ideas. The problem is so complex and so difficult that we feel like we need everyone to solve it. And it's very additive. So we love adding things to the plan. So that's the presentation.